All right, so soft target, this pilot episode, it throws us right into the firestorm of Iraq. But it's not just about the action, is it?
No, not at all. It uses that really familiar fish out of water trope.
Yeah.
So we've got Alexis Engle, plucked straight out of her cushy corporate life in D.C., dropped right into Camp Hope, a military base right in the thick of it in Iraq.
Yeah, you see her immediately trying to get her bearings, like right away in that opening scene at the bar, ambitious, going head to head with a senior partner at Culpepper International.
Oh, yeah, that's a tense scene.
Yeah, you can practically smell the cigar smoke and the tension.
And you get that first glimpse of Alexis's character, not afraid to challenge anyone, even if it means walking away from this prestigious job.
Knows her worth.
Exactly.
But then we shift gears. From this high-stakes corporate world to a news report about human trafficking in the Middle East.
Setting the stage.
Yeah, setting the stage for Alexis's unexpected journey to Iraq.
Such a stark contrast between these two worlds. That polished boardroom to the gritty reality of a war zone.
And it's not just visual, you see it in how they interact with each other, too. Like when Alexis first meets Xander, he's her security detail, all business.
Oh yeah, Xander, she's expecting a certain level of formality, right? But Xander's quick to remind her that out there, it's not about protocol, it's about survival. Especially after that rude Irish incident. What an introduction to Iraq.
Yikes. Talk about a baptism by fire. Speaking of rude Irish, that story Gino tells about the corkscrew landing. It really sets the tone, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Throws you right into it. Dangers everywhere. Even landing a plane becomes a high-stakes maneuver.
Makes you realize why everyone at Camp Hope seems so on edge all the time.
Heightened senses, totally.
But there are these weirdly normal moments, too. Like Alexis even compares Camp Hope to summer camp at one point.
It's such a bizarre juxtaposition, right?
Yeah.
Mundane routine happening in a war zone. It's incredible how humans adapt.
Speaking of adapting, how about Alexis during that attack? In the bunker, everyone else is freaking out, and she's calmly discussing a media tour with Diane Sawyer's producer.
Ice cold. It's almost unsettling how she just switches into crisis management mode.
Total pro. Keep calm and carry on to the extreme. Do you think that's part of what makes her so good at her job?
Definitely. She can assess the situation, figure out the problem, make a plan, even when everything's falling apart. And speaking of figuring things out, those flashbacks to how she ended up at Culpepper.
Oh yeah, that scene with Graham and O'Brien, classic office politics.
Total power play.
O'Brien, the one who caused the mess in Iraq, trying to throw Alexis under the bus, and Graham?
More worried about Culpepper's image than fixing anything.
Exactly.
Corporate greed, it's a tale as old as time.
But even as a junior associate, she holds her own. Remember when O'Brien makes that crack about Armani not making Kevlar?
And she shoots back, maybe they should.
Yeah.
Classic.
She's great. So we've got Alexis, ambitious, quick-witted, but then we meet Tiffany Hillsong and Gino Scott in Iraq, and they are different.
Night and day. Tiffany's a bit of a mystery at first, all smiles, but insistent on being called by her proper name. Remember her desk.
Covered in, "These are not my name," and all the ways people mispronounce it.
It's powerful. Refusing to be just another face, another stereotype.
Really makes you think about identity and respect, especially in a place like Camp Hope.
Absolutely. And then there's Gino.
Mm-hmm.
Cynical, jaded.
Seen it all.
Yeah, like he's just going through the motions, places bets on how long Alexis will last.
Doesn't exactly scream team player, does it?
But it does make you wonder, will she crack? Will she prove him wrong?
Keeps you guessing, like watching a high-stakes game, and we don't know who to root for yet.
And that's what makes Soft Target so good. Right from the start, you're hooked. You care about these characters, their flaws, their complexities, and you have to know what happens next.
Feels like we're watching this ticking time bomb, and yeah, those bets don't help. But before we get there, we have to talk about Lindsay Smith. That first scene, we knew it was bad, but then hearing her tell it.
It's one thing to see it, it's another to hear from her.
Awful.
Really makes it hit home.
And the way they portray those guys, Robert, Charlie, Earl, they aren't these cartoon villains, you know?
Normal guys, which makes it even creepier.
Exactly. It's like the danger's hidden in plain sight. Lindsay lets her guard down. She's starting to see through them. Then bam.
The other shoe drops. And this is where the show gets really interesting, I think, with the whole power dynamic. Lindsay's young, ambitious, in this environment where the rules are different. Unspoken, even.
Trying to prove herself, which might have made her more of a target.
For sure.
And then Alexis arrives. She's got to clean up Culpepper's mess.
Yeah.
But even as she's doing damage control, she gets pulled into Lindsay's story.
She can't help it, right? Once you know, you know.
Remember that scene Alexis is cleaning up Tiffany's desk, lecturing her about appearances and all that?
It's such a small thing, but it says a lot. She's in the middle of Camp Hope, chaos everywhere, and she's worried about a clean desk.
Like, she's trying to force her corporate world onto this situation. It's jarring.
Totally. And you can tell, as Alexis learns more about what happened to Lindsay, something changes.
Yeah, she can't just compartmentalize this one.
And then, boom. Lindsay Smith, congressman's daughter.
Whole new ballgame. Talk about raising the stakes.
It's not just about Culpepper anymore.
It's like watching a house of cards, you know? One wrong move and the whole thing could collapse. And with the State Department stepping in.
Andrea Flores coming in with a hard line.
It's not about justice anymore. It's about damage control. Plain and simple.
Absolutely. And through it all, you've got Gino and Tiffany off making their little bets.
Like it's a game to them.
It's disturbing, honestly. Shows how desensitized they've become.
So the question is, can Alexis stay grounded? Will she get sucked into that same cynicism?
$1 million question. Will she do what's right? Or will she just protect herself and the company?
Because what's right and what's safe for her career, those are two different paths now.
No doubt. And we've seen she's ambitious, she's a player.
But she also has a conscience.
This episode, it really sets up that internal struggle she's facing.
Yeah. It's a tough spot to be in. And we've seen how Alexis operates, right? She's got that drive, that sharpness.
She's a problem solver, that's for sure.
But will she solve this problem by exposing the truth or by sweeping it under the rug?
And that's the big question, isn't it? Because the stakes go way beyond Culpepper International now.
We're talking about potentially horrific things happening, and then to find out a congressman's daughter's involved.
It's a whole other level. And the show really makes you feel the weight of that, you know? It's not just a corporate thriller. It's about the real human cost of these decisions.
It makes you think about the bigger picture. Like, how do things like this happen? How do people in power get away with it?
Right. It's about more than just Alexis's story. It's about holding those in power accountable. It's a conversation we need to have, even if it's uncomfortable.
Absolutely. So as we're wrapping up here, what are your final thoughts on the pilot? What really stuck with you?
I think what impressed me most was how the show manages to balance that intense thriller aspect with these really genuine human moments.
Yeah, it does.
You've got these characters dealing with incredibly complex situations, but at its core, it's about people, you know, trying to navigate a world that feels unpredictable.
Funny you should mention that, because one thing that stuck with me was Alexis's comment about Camp Hope feeling like summer camp.
Right. In the middle of a war zone.
It seems crazy, but there's this weird sense of normalcy that comes through, even in the midst of chaos.
People adapt.
It's how we survive, right?
Yeah.
We find those moments, those little bits of routine, and hold on to them.
It's the resilience of the human spirit.
Right.
We find a way.
We do. Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to surface from our deep dive into Soft Target. But much like Alexis, we're left with a lot of unanswered questions.
Oh, for sure. This is just the beginning.
This pilot, it feels like the tip of the iceberg, and I have a feeling our listeners are going to be thinking about these issues and this show long after they finish listening.
I hope so, because that's the point, right? To keep asking these questions, to keep the conversation going.
To keep digging for the truth, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and we'll see you all in the next deep dive.